So, the highly anticipated Insomniac Spider-Man game has been released. Tons of people are playing it, it's getting rave reviews, and sold way better than anyone's thinking it would. So, is this the game to finally dethrone Spider-Man 2 as the best Spider-Man game? Let me be honest here for a bit. Spider-Man 2 hasn't been the best Spider-Man game for a long time. There have been plenty of games after that that have dethroned it in almost every category, and the only thing that's held up from the game is web swinging.
I'm out!
So for this review, I will mostly be focusing on this game, but given the influence, I will be bringing up comparisons to the Arkham games. I will try my best to not do it too often and rate this game on its own merit, but just an FYI, there will be comparisons here or there. Let's start with the story. Peter has been Spider-Man for 8 years, and after all this time, he finally has a chance to take down the Kingpin for good. After a pretty good intro sequence with an alright boss fight, Spider-Man takes down Fisk for good and has him arrested. While there's a short period of peace, a power vacuum occurs in the city due to Fisk's absence. In this vacuum, Spidey villains both new and old start to appear, and it's up to Spider-Man to save New York once again. So, I do have some choice words about the story. When it comes to the Spider-Man side of the story, it is a fairly standard comic book story. Makes sense since the game is written by a comic book writer. Villains to fight, city to save, Sinister Six ganging up on Spidey, the third act being all dramatic and epic, it's all there. Spidey's side of the story is good, if basic. Peter's side of the story is a little more interesting, as he is just a guy trying to live his life. Dealing with work, rent, relationships, he is incredibly relatable. Probably helps in my case since at the time of this video I am the same age as Peter in this game. However, it helps to ground the story and make it feel more personal, as we see Peter's life as well as him trying to be Spider-Man and balance the two together. And like the best Spider-Man stories out there, when you combine both the stories of Spider-Man and Peter together, it becomes a genuinely great story. The action of Spidey and the drama of Peter together makes the story a really good one to play through. It is very well done, however, it still has some issues. Besides logic problems I'm sure plenty of everything wrong with videos will happily point out, there are some problems in the story I feel do need to be addressed, though these do not destroy the narrative. Let me get the most controversial bit out of the way. Mary Jane midway through becomes a bit of a bitch. I get it, she wants to be more independent and not be the damsel all the time, I get it. But not only does she put herself in life or death situations almost constantly and asking Peter to not worry about it, but she knows Peter is Spider-Man, knows his uncle died, knows that villains attack those closest to him, and knows that he will try to protect those closest to him to not have another Uncle Ben situation, and breaks up with him over this. The hell? She does get better, but that is still a bad moment for her character. The story has a habit of also dropping people off the face of the earth. A few villains get closure, but others just seem to be never mentioned again. For example, when Mr. Negative is beaten in the story for good, he gets knocked out, and we are too busy dealing with a different villain to know what happened. I believe they hand-wave it and say that he was arrested, but it seems like an easy detail to miss. This isn't just for one villain, it's for quite a few. Fisk gets taken down in the intro, which is fine, so I'd normally expect him to not make an appearance after that. But there's a quick moment in the middle of the game where Spider-Man talks to him, so he's still relevant, right? Nope. We never see or hear from him again. Even when there was a prison break and tons of Spider-Man's enemies escape, we never hear or see if Fisk has escaped. At all. Not a peep. He should have either been never heard from again after the intro, or he should have been given some closure at some point instead of being forgotten by the plot. Now, this one is a bit of a spoiler, but given that you know that this character will play a big part as soon as you see him, is it really? Dr. Octopus is in this game, and he's the main villain. However, they try to make him way more sympathetic in this game, to really see a connection between him and Peter, and to make you feel sad when the inevitable fall happens. However, the pacing of this is a little weird. It starts off really slow. We get all the little hints throughout from cutscenes and audio recordings, but towards the end he just becomes a villain. It weirdly went way too slow and left me wondering if he would be saved for the sequel, to him just turning evil at a certain point in the story. It's implied that either the tentacles altered his mind, or that he was always like this, but the tentacles just brought out to the surface, but either way, it's oddly paced. However, the set pieces presented in this game are legitimately fantastic, and definitely helps with the uniqueness that this game can bring to the narrative table when it comes to Spider-Man games. And I don't want to spoil anything major, but that ending was way more heart-wrenching than I think anyone expected. Well, I assume it was, but I wouldn't know since some people can't keep it in their pants and have spoilers in the title of their videos days after a game has released. Thanks, YouTube recommendation system. So yeah, the story is very well done, not counting a few hiccups occasionally. The graphics. Okay, I have no doubt that at some point in time, these realistic graphics will look awful and dated. But right now, they look incredible. Characters look so real, and the city itself is so detailed and seems accurate even when it isn't. The faces need a bit of work, but the power of modern face-pour technology always manages to impress me. The lighting engine also deserves some recognition. New York at night looks well enough, and the daytime looks incredibly clear and, well, sunny. But New York at sunset is gorgeous. The light reflecting off the buildings, the shadow and light on the character models, the sun blazing in the distance, oh, so good. The animations in this game are mostly good as well. Everything flows together when it comes to combat animations, swinging around, which we'll get to how that works a bit later, or the best example, the parkour system. When you're running and are pretty much near anything, Peter flips and jumps and seamlessly runs from object to object in such a great way that there are times I'd rather run into things just to see what he will do. However, it is a bit automatic and does take away from any kind of thought when running. There's no reason to think when traversing New York, and that is a bit sad. Regardless though, the animations in this game are really good. Now the gameplay. Yes, the basic game mechanic of the combat is based off the Arkham games. However, they seem to take much more inspiration from the Amazing Spider-Man games, which were inspired by the Arkham games. Didn't make much headway there, huh? In fact, it seems so similar to the movie games that when the footage of the game was first shown, I thought it was just a nicer version of those games. Thank God it's mostly its own thing. Mostly. You have a basic attack button and a counter button. Unlike Batman, however, where after the first 3 attacks you can keep bouncing around from enemy to enemy and the counter attack is an attack, in Spider-Man you can bounce around, but you mostly attack the same person multiple times and the counter is more of a dodge. Same style of gameplay, different execution. You can also acquire more skills to increase what is possible in combat. These skills are not too hard to do, mind you, but real combos can be performed. You also have multiple gadgets to help in combat, such as web shooters, impact webs, concussion blasts, etc. They are really handy when it comes to dealing with enemies, and also great for making sure 30 people aren't attacking you all at once. You also have a special move associated with a suit, but I pretty much use web blocking the whole time, so I don't really have much to say about the differences in special moves. When you master the combat, it feels awesome, especially if you can pull off an incredibly satisfying finisher. Bouncing around, actual combos, using gadgets and finishers to take down enemies, the combat is really fun, if kind of basic. Stealth, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. You are limited in what you can do, and it is very boring. You have 3 main ways of taking down enemies: behind the back, web strike, and perch takedown, with some environmental help occasionally. That's it. The gadgets are useful for other types of takedowns or for distractions, but the stealth does not evolve much from there on. And even then, with the exception of mandatory stealth sections, you can really just go in guns blazing and not worry, since dodging bullets is not hard to do. Okay, so, in the Arkham games, the reason why stealth was so good was that not only did you have many ways to take down enemies in a silent manner, but guns will fuck you up. So you actually have to plan your moves out. That aspect is just missing from these. Plus, in the Batman games, enemies actually react to your actions. They will be more fearful and try to team up to make it harder for you, or just become erratic when they are the only person left and are pretty much shitting their pants in fear. Hell, some enemies actually have countermeasures to your tactics, so you need to find new ones to beat them. That kind of evolution does not exist. It makes these sections pretty pointless. There are also stealth sections with Miles and Mary Jane, but not only do they feel like padding, they introduce mechanics that may be used once or twice and then never again, and the AI ranges from no peripheral vision to seeing you immediately. It is not well done, and there is really no reason for it to exist other than varying up the gameplay. The final main aspect of the gameplay is the swinging. Like the parkour, it is a little automatic. You can more or less just hold the button and you'll be fine. However, if you really want to enjoy the swinging, you have to do more to build up some momentum. Jumping at the peak of a swing both raises you higher and makes you faster. You can also have quick web zips to move horizontally at a fast pace, and after a web zip you can do a point launch to do almost the same thing. Combining this all together makes swinging through the city incredibly exhilarating, and the swinging is well done and incredibly enjoyable to do, if, again, a bit on autopilot at some times. So 2/3 of the gameplay is well done, if a bit easy and basic, but it is still enjoyable. That 1/3 though, yeah, the stealth is bad. The side missions are something that I quickly want to go into. The quality of them varies a bit. You have actual side missions that can have unique qualities about them, and the side objectives, which are more grindy and generic, but still try their best. For example, you have the Harry Osborn facilities that try to have unique aspects about them and make them feel more unique than other types of side objectives, and you have pigeon chasing. The less said about that, the better. The side missions are more story-based and try to be completely unique, and kind of works, but there aren't that many in the game. The best side mission for me was the Tombstone one. It continues to plot from the main game, gives you one of the cooler boss fights, and has real cutscenes. It is a great example of the kind of side missions you could have. The worst side mission is searching for the missing students, which could have been just as an objective, and it would have been just as bad as pointless. The side objectives, though, take them or leave them. And like every Spider-Man open-world game, you have random crimes that pop up every 15 seconds. They try to make it cooler by having more cinematic moments, such as the car chases and when they are stopped, but they are the same as other crimes fundamentally. The side missions are a much better attempt than other games, but still have their faults. The bosses in this game are... okay, so let me cover the good and the bad. Let's start with the good. The designs of these villains are great. They are both faithful to the comics while still being unique. Some of the build-up for these fights are also done pretty well. For example, Shocker gets a chase sequence, then later gets a boss fight. Likewise, Scorpion gets a set piece, which is fantastic and a nice throwback to the PS1 games, before his proper boss fight. However, there's a lot more bad in my opinion. Not horrible, mind you, but wasted opportunity. For one thing, the boss fights are incredibly simple. Most fights are usually just the most rudimentary boss design. It utilizes the basic mechanics of the game, but it is not a lesson all the mechanics in the game has taught you so far as boss fights usually tend to be. Either wait for the boss to leave himself open, or make it the opening. That's usually about it. In comparison, the Arkham games, Arkham City and Arkham Origins more specifically, test your skills on multiple facets of gameplay, and because of that are more fun to figure out and make it less of a clusterfuck of particle effects on screen. Give Spider-Man more options in these fights to really make it seem like something Spider-Man would do to beat the villain, instead of just web up and attack, or wait then attack. With the exception of Mr. Negative and Doc Ock, which are some of the better fights in the game, the other villains barely get built up and are taken out almost as fast and don't leave as much of an impact. Like, we get introduced to the Sinister Six, and then they're gone almost as fast since we fight two at a time, which is a cool and unique challenge, but takes out the unique gameplay and set pieces you could have played were they individual instead. Like, for example, the Scorpion fight could have been his solo fight, or his build-up before an even crazier fight, but instead he is gimped so he can fight Rhino at the same time. Or imagine the Electro and Vulture fight, which is great, but would have been cooler where they separate so we can really see what they can do, plus have build-up so they don't feel as slapdash as they were. Give us the option for multiple main missions so we can fight them in any order. Can we also talk about that prison system that never got capitalized on? When a villain goes to jail at certain points in the story, you see them in there when a little box inside the screen shows up and it shows who's in jail, yet after everyone escapes, we don't see that return. Why? It would make it feel so much more satisfying to see that empty box fill up again as you take down more bosses. It makes it feel like that box doesn't have a purpose, since it really doesn't. My last gripe is the villains they chose. I get at this point Spider-Man's rogue gallery is incredibly iconic, so it is hard to find ones that will be unique in every way possible, but come on, Electro, Rhino, Scorpion, Vulture, and Dr. Octopus again? Can we get someone who hasn't been in a movie yet? You had a great thing going with Tombstone and Taskmaster and Mr. Negative kinda, and Screwball too, I guess, but then we had the same people as always at the forefront. Maybe we could have some more obscure ones play a bigger role, like Hobgoblin, or Morbius, or Hydro... You know what, never mind, the selection is fine. The boss fights still have enjoyment in them, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more wrong with them than right, and I hope the inevitable sequel fixes that big time. I also want to bring up New York vs. Gotham. Last Batman comparison, I swear, don't kill me. New York is a joy to swing around, but uninteresting as it is just New York. Granted, it is a fictional version of New York with some differences and not being a completely accurate version of the city, but it is just New York. Gotham and Arkham Asylum are way more interesting to explore given how these are fake places and are built from the ground up, and there are so many little references and Easter eggs in them to find, and it's just more of a joy to actually look around instead of just passing through. Maybe the next game can find a way around this. This isn't a negative against the game, just food for thought. Also, the game has glitches. It is to be expected and there's nothing game-breaking, at least nothing that I've seen, but it makes the game a pain at times, and hilarious when things go wrong at the worst times. The biggest thing holding this game back is that it is just another open-world Spider-Man game. If you have played another Spider-Man game that is a sandbox game, you have played this. It makes this game feel less original and just another type of game in that style. What does give it an edge is that it is incredibly polished compared to other examples, and it also has a great story to back it up. So overall, the story is amazing, and probably the best Spider-Man video game story out there right now. The graphics are spectacular, and the gameplay is superior to pretty much every other Spider-Man game. However, the side missions are pretty unimpressive, save one or two. The bosses are pretty dull, and the uniqueness of the overall game is a bit inferior to other games of this type, or even some other Spider-Man games. It is still a great game though, and I highly recommend it. I give this game an 8.9 out of 10. Be greater. God, that tagline is terrible. Besides logic problems that I'm sure plenty of everything wrong with videos will happily point out, there are some problems in the story I feel do need to be addressed. However, the set pieces... Okay, so, in the Arkham games, the reason why the stealth was so good was not only did you have many ways to take down enemies in a silent manner, but guns will fuck you up, so you actually have to plan your moves out. That aspect is just missing from these. Plus, in the Batman games, Anemone, Nemo. The side missions are something that I quickly want to go into. The quality of them varies quite a bit. You have actual side missions that you can use unique quality that have. Reading is hard, and voicing is hard, apparently. I can't read, somehow. I'm reading, but I can't read, if that makes any sense. The biggest thing holding this game back is that it's just another open-world Spider-Man game. If you have played another Spider-Man game that is a sandbox game, you have played this. It makes it feel incredibly less original. Fast. Going too fast. Okay. Oh my god, why am I making a JoJo reference in Spider-Man? Oh, Bad Adam. Oh, come on.